Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy, the Mad Kiger. And up here today, guys, I have a suggested video for you guys. I can't remember who suggested it. You know who you are, so I'm so sorry I forgot your name. But today we are talking about some underrated and hidden gems on the Xbox 360. And I've actually got more than what I thought I had. And I've still got room to do another video on this, maybe a part 2 sometime. And I'm going to be honest with you, the Xbox 360 is a great system to collect for nowadays because the games are really cheap. In fact, most Xbox 360 games are under £5 these days. In fact, the ones that are more than £5 are just some of the more collectible games and stuff like that. And a good thing about Xbox 360 is the majority of Xbox 360 games work now on the Xbox One. In fact, they play better on Xbox One as well. And they work either on disc or even sometimes digital. And of course, we know the Xbox Series X is going to have backwards compatibility. I'm not entirely sure if that means full backwards compatibility. So every Xbox 360, every Xbox One, every original Xbox game is going to work. Or if it just means that the games that already work on Xbox One's backwards compatibility, so like the few hundred games that already work on the Xbox 360 through Xbox One will be all transferred over, or they're going to add more. I'm not entirely sure. If you know, let me know in the comments below. But anyway, let's just get straight into it. I've got a bunch of games that I want to go through. So like I said, these are hidden gems or underrated games. Up first, we have Lost Odyssey. Now, Lost Odyssey, this game is a game that I tried a tiny bit of. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't played all of these games all the way through. I'm going on what other people suggest as well. But Lost Odyssey is a game made by the same people who worked on Final Fantasy. And this game has just a huge cult following now. It has an amazing story, a really unique world. The gameplay system, it is turn-based. This game had 4 discs. I mean, this is a 4-disc game. It's huge. This game is a game that went under the radar. And ever since people have talked about it, it's come back in a big way. And people love this game for what it is. And, you know, I for one, wouldn't mind going back and trying it out. I think this game is backwards compatible, but I could be wrong. But yeah, this game is one that a lot of people love. And it's a game that really went under the radar when it first came out. And people, you know, dug it up and thought, you know what, wow, this game is huge, it's amazing. Again, it is a turn-based JRPG. It uses a similar thing to, I think, Shadow Hearts maybe, where it has like the little time symbol where you attack, and if you time it just right, you do extra damage kind of thing. I could be wrong. But yeah, this is a really unique JRPG and one that a lot of people recommend. Next, we have something that's not really a JRPG, but that is the Earth Defense Force series. There is a third one on Xbox 360. And I like the Earth Defense Force games because while these games aren't necessarily overly amazing in terms of graphics or sound or story, they are just a really fun, gimmicky, over-the-top third-person shooter. Imagine Dynasty Warriors, but with guns. So, you know, hundreds of enemies on the screen at once, and you're going around using all these crazy weaponry. I really enjoy the Earth Defense Force series, and I will be honest with you, they do get a little bit monotonous after a while. But these games are just great. You know, it's all about giant bugs and aliens and giant robots. It's very like inspired by, you know, these Japanese monster movies from like the 60s and stuff. And obviously you play as all these different like units and soldiers, and you can get mech suits and tanks and helicopters and loads of different weapons. There's loads of different, you know, hundreds of weapons to collect and things. And yeah, these are really fun games. And the best part is a lot of these I have like co-op as well. And, you know, they're just fun, stupidly fun games. They're not overly amazing, but they're definitely worth checking out if you're into something a little bit more on the more gameplay, casual gameplay side. Next, we have Prey. Now, the thing about Prey is there was a re-release of Prey. Well, not a re-release, but a new game called Prey, which played more like Deus Ex or like an RPG. But there was originally meant to be a sequel to this game on Xbox 360. Now, what's cool about this version of Prey is this is a sort of first-person sci-fi slash horror game. And yeah, it was very, imagine something like Dead Space, maybe throwing a bit of fear in there, aliens. And yeah, it's a really fun game. I remember playing it years ago and actually enjoying it. It is a pretty, dark and grim game. And it's really weird that, it's made by 3D Realms, the same people who worked on the Duke Nukem series. And it actually reminds me a little bit of Duke Nukem Forever in its gameplay, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is actually a pretty fun game, and I believe it is backwards compatible as well. If you're looking for a more linear horror experience, definitely check this one out. It's a fun game, it isn't over the top, and it's very cheap, and I think it's backwards compatible. In fact, most of the games that I'm showing are backwards compatible. Next, we have Eat Lead. Now, I believe this is there was originally an Eat Lead game years ago, but the reason I wanted to talk about this one is because this game is actually, well, in terms of gameplay, it's kind of like a third-person shooter. Not overly amazing, but it's actually a very, very funny game. And, it's really unique because each level is its own thing. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff in this. There's levels where you're fighting sprite-based enemies. There's levels where there's zombies. There's ones where you have to fight guys with water guns. It's really, like, over the top. I believe, I'm not sure, Eat Lead, Matt Hazard, and stuff like that. I remember playing this game years ago and actually really enjoying it. It's actually stupidly fun. It's not amazing by today's standard, but it definitely it stands up. And Will Arnett and Neil Patrick Harris do some of the voice acting in this, so it's a little bit of stuff there for you guys. Then we have X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition. Now, obviously, say what you want about the movie, whether you like it or not, but the game is actually really good. This is a hack and slash game, and it's one of the few Marvel games that actually had an 18 rating or an R rating for you guys in America. And this is a very violent game, and it makes sense because Wolverine obviously is one of the more violent characters in the Marvel comics, and I'm really glad that they went with a violent game. Because Marvel tends to be nowadays more family friendly, more than, stuff like that. Yeah, we had Deadpool and stuff, but this is a really fun game. If you're looking for just sort of like a fun hack and slash, almost like a hack and slash beat 'em up RPG, not really an RPG, but just a authentic action game, check this one out. Even if you haven't seen the movie, it doesn't really matter. It follows the movie somewhat, but I don't know if I've ever played this game. I might have played it, but I know this is definitely one worth checking out. So if you're looking for something a bit more violent but superhero themed, check it out. Then we have Green Lantern Rise of the Manhunters. Now, the movie, say what you want about the movie. I haven't actually seen the movie, but of course, the game actually is actually pretty fun. Now, what's great about this game is you can play it with co-op as well. And what's really cool about this game is obviously, Green Lantern has the ability to basically create whatever he wants from his ring using his imagination or whatever. In this game, it's really cool because it plays like a drop-in, drop-out, beat-em-up style game. And what's really cool is you can just get all of these upgrades and things for your lantern. So you can get like your usual, blast and fist and sword style, but you can also get like ones where you can turn into a tank, a giant mech, a plane, all of these crazy stuff. I remember playing this years ago and actually thinking it was actually pretty fun. I never beat it, mind you, but definitely one worth checking out if you're looking for something a little bit more fun in the superhero department. Then we have Enchanted Arms. This is actually a spin-off of the Wild Arms series back on the PlayStation 2. And this game, actually, I've talked about this game before. It is a mix between a JRPG. It's more Western because it's made by Ubisoft. But it's an early JRPG on the Xbox 360. And what's great about this game is that It does play like, you know, like a Final Fantasy thing, but it plays on like a grid system as well. And it has almost like a Pokemon style to it, where you can collect all of these different monsters and stuff and use them in your battle. And that's what I really enjoyed about this game, is just being able to collect all of these different monsters. Imagine like Final Fantasy meets Pokemon. This is what you get with it, basically. And it's actually not a bad game. It doesn't hold up as well as, say, other JRPGs by today's standards, but it's definitely one that I enjoyed. And I don't really play a lot of JRPGs, even though I have a lot of them. I don't play a lot of them. Ah, yes. Kingdom of Amalur: Reckoning. The good news is this game has got a remaster out. I'm not sure if it's already out, but this game, I remember when I rented this game years ago, back in Blockbuster days, you know, so, and I seen it and I thought, oh, it's probably just going to be a pretty boring, generic hack and slash RPG, but actually no. This game is like a combination of Dragon Age and Fable. Now, what I mean by that is it has the RPG elements of, say, Dragon Age, you know, where it's all RPG orientated and lots of customization options, quests and all of that stuff. But it has a gameplay style like Fable, a similar hack and slash Fable style thing, and it even has like, even the world itself really reminds me of Fable. And it's very like, not childish, but much more charming, I guess. And it actually works really well. This is a game that a lot of people recommend. I recommend it too. If you're not really big into RPGs, but you want to try something a little bit more user-friendly, Kingdom of Amalur: Reckoning really has pleases both people. You know, it has the RPG element, but it has a very user-friendly combat system and stuff like Fable does. And yes, I know that there's been a new Fable and I can't wait. I've talked about this game 100 times and I'm talking about it again. Stuntman Ignition. Man, I really, really want this game to come back. Stuntman Ignition is one of the few racing games that I really, really like. Now, I say racing games very loosely. This game is basically like, you know, all of those car chase scenes in those awesome movies, Gone in 60 Seconds, Fast and Furious, you know, James Bond, all of that stuff. This game is essentially that. All you have to do in this game is a simple objective. Point A to point B, drive and follow instruction. Now, the instructions could be something as simple as making a jump or turning at the right second, going through a certain area. However, this game is very tough, very challenging and unforgiving. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's hard, it's not playable, because this is the game that makes you want go, you know what, I messed up one tiny thing and it got me from getting a perfect score. I'm going to do that mission again. This game doesn't really lead too much in terms of, you know, you, especially in some of the later levels, you need to get things down to a T. And it played like an awesome, you know, like an action movie, basically. But it's all, again, it's all about movies. So if you mess up, you go back and you've got to do it again. And what's great about this game is, like I said, it's all about precision driving. There's three things in this game: precision, control, and precision and control, basically. You really need to be precise with your driving, and it has a great sense of control to it as well. If you mess up, that's it, you got to do it again. But when you get it down to a T and you get a perfect score, you feel like a god. Well, not necessarily like a god, but you feel really accomplished. Really fun game. Even if you're not a fan of racing games, this isn't a racing game. It's more like an action game. Speaking of our action games, we're talking here about Hunted the Demon Forge. It's made by Bethesda. And Hunted the Demon Forge is basically like a combination of, say, something like a mythical hack and slash game and Gears of War. This is a really fun co-op game. I remember playing it years ago, and I'm not sure if it is backwards compatible or not. I have to double check. And, you know, what's really cool about this game is it has sort of like two styles to it. You have the traditional, like, magic, hack and slash combat areas, but you also have like a Gears of War cover system where you have like your bow and arrow and your crossbows. There's 2 playable characters in this game. There's a woman and a man. I don't remember their names. It's been a long time since I played it, but this is a really fun game, and it's actually one of the few co-op RPGs that definitely is worth checking out. It is a little bit more on the linear side, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad game. I really enjoyed this game, and it's definitely one worth checking out if you're looking for something a little bit more on the co-op area. Street Fighter X Tekken. One of the few fighting games that actually a lot of people don't remember. And Street Fighter X Tekken is basically Street Fighter 4 with Tekken characters as well. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if I've ever properly played this game, but this is just a game that I wanted to mention because not a lot of people talk about this. There's a lot of crossover games out there when it comes to fighting, like Mortal Kombat and DC Universe and, you know, the older Street Fighter games and like Capcom and Neo Geo Coliseum games, but not many people talk about Street Fighter X Tekken, or Cross Tekken, I think it's called. But yeah, this is a fun game. If you enjoyed Street Fighter 4's combat style, that's what this game is very similar to, because it was mostly made by Capcom, not really. I think it was a Capcom game, and they got the licensing from the Tekken characters and stuff. Next we have Wheelman. Now Wheelman is basically, like I said, it reminds me of Stuntman, but with a bit more open-ended. It is a semi-open world game in which you play as Vin Diesel. It's kind of like Fast and Furious, the game, basically. It has like some third-person shooter bit, but it's mostly about like driving and high-speed chases and things like that. And it has a really cool like driving system in which you can, when you're driving a car, you can actually like ram the cars left and right and forward and knock people off the streets and stuff. But it's actually a really fun game. I'm sorry I'm not really doing a good job of describing it. I haven't played it in a long time, but it's one of the few games that actually, it makes you feel like it is a movie-based game, but it's not. But it feels like you're playing a movie, basically. But it's a really cool game. Highly recommend Wheelman. I've talked about Outfit hundreds of times, and there's a reason why it stays in my videos. I'm going to be honest with you, in terms of graphics, it doesn't hold up that well today. But I still love the Outfit because it combines both like almost like a real-time strategy with a third-person shooter. I wouldn't really say real-time strategy that much, but what's really cool about this game is you have 3 playable characters, each with their own weapons and skill sets. Not really skill sets, but like different weapons and stuff. And what's really cool about this game is you can basically like do these things where you can call in vehicle drops and turrets and reinforcements and stuff. And it really leaves a lot of, I don't know, I love this game. I used to play this all the time with my brothers, and it still holds up really well today. It's not the most enjoyable game if you're hoping for something amazing. It is an underrated game and a hidden gem to say the least, but I don't know, man. I feel like this game should get more attention because it's a really fun, different take on a World War II game, and not a lot of companies really take chances anymore with their games nowadays. It seems like the formula is always the same. Next we have Enslaved Odyssey to the West. This is a game that so many people really missed out on. This game is basically like a mix between Uncharted and Monkey King and, you know, like a beat 'em up and stuff. It's basically it's an action adventure game with some sort of like beat 'em up elements in there, but it's got a really cool story to it and has a really beautiful game world. And like I said, I can't really remember too much about it. I'll have to go back and play it sometime. But it's definitely one worth checking out. I'm sorry I'm not doing a great job of explaining each game. I want to try and keep a good time on this, but Enslaved Odyssey to the West is definitely one that you want to check out if you're looking for something a little bit more unique in terms of story-wise and gameplay world. Next we have Star Trek. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't seen the new Star Trek movies, but this is actually a pretty fun co-op game. Basically you play as Spot and Kirk, not the original versions, of course. But this is actually a pretty cool game. It's like a co-op third-person shooter, and it has some pretty cool, unique modes in it. Because what's cool is that, you know, there's parts in the game where you can be passive aggressive or you can just be fully aggressive. Like there's some enemies in the game that, you know, you don't want to kill, you stun, you know, set your phaser to stun and stuff like that. I haven't played it all the way through, but I do remember playing it a bit with my friend back in the day, and it's definitely one worth checking out. Even if you're not a big Star Trek fan and you haven't seen the movies, I played this well before I even watched Star Trek, so yeah, it's actually a pretty good game. I would recommend it if you're into sci-fi games even. Then we have Unreal Tournament 3. Now, this is a great multiplayer game. I don't think the servers are still up, but this game is basically, you know, but Unreal Tournament, everyone knows what Unreal Tournament was. It was an arena shooter back in the day, like Quake 3 and stuff like that. But Unreal Tournament 3 is actually a really fun game because this was actually made by Epic Studios, the same games who worked on Gears of War at the time. And I think back in the day that if you had brought this game, because you've got some Gears of War 2 highlights and stuff like that. And even the character on the front reminds me of Dom from Gears of War. But this is like one of the only arena shooters that's on the Xbox 360 that still you can play offline and stuff like that. And it has a lot of like vehicles and stuff in it as well. And the hoverboard, I love just going around on the hoverboard. It's a really fun game. It's not amazing, it's not as good as the original, but it was a nice sort of throwback to the original game. Then we have the Bureau XCOM Declassified. Now, technically this is part of the XCOM series, but what I enjoy about this game is that this isn't actually your traditional XCOM game where it's all about strategy. This is a third-person shooter with XCOM elements to it. It has a similar vibe to XCOM with the upgrading and the RPG elements, but it's all about, you know, in the 60s and 50s, basically. You know, so like a War of the World style thing going on here. But what's really cool about this game is I really enjoyed the combat. Is even though it's third-person shooter, what's really cool is you can like go into like a strategy mode, like and you can like call in like use turrets and special orders to your teammates and stuff like that. So it combines strategy with third-person shooter, and I beat this game back in the day, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one I want to go back to. Yeah. Then we have the two Condemned games. These are games that a lot of people really want to come back. Condemned 1 back in the day was a game that everyone played back on YouTube. You know, this was the scary staple back in the day. Condemned is basically a first-person survival horror, but it's much more linear. And you basically play as like a detective. It has a lot of like psychological horror in there. But what's really cool about this game is it mostly relies on hand-to-hand and melee combat. And it's not overly complicated, and you can do some pretty crazy like environmental kills and stuff. And when you do get a gun in this game, you can't get ammo for it. All you can do is check how much ammo you have. So it's definitely a pretty hardcore survival horror game, and it definitely is pretty scary as well. It still holds up in the horror department. Then we have Singularity. This is definitely one worth checking out because it basically combines like a first-person shooter with almost like a time travel element, basically. What's really cool is like you can use this time building element where you can rewind time and fast forward time and like build things and rebuild stuff. It has almost like a puzzle element to it. I think it's sort of in the Cold War era, I think. It's one of the few games that not a lot of people talk about, and it's a unique game. It's not amazing by today's standards, but it's one of the few first-person shooters that was still unique to the time, and not a lot of first-person shooters these days are unique. They're always like a clone of something else nowadays. It's either we've got Overwatch-style games or Wolfenstein, Doom-style games, or Call of Duty games. There's no in-between anymore. There's no original content, I find, with first-person shooters. Then we had Deadly Premonition. Of course, they've just released the second one, and this was released on the Nintendo Switch. This game is like a combination of, say, Twin Peaks or Silent Hill. It's semi-open world and it's very Japanese. It's very weird and wonderful. It's not the perfect game in terms of controls. The PS3 or the Switch version is the better version to get. But this game actually gets a lot of praise because of how it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it works to the game's favour. I don't know. Then we have Spec Ops The Line, a game that I actually don't really remember actually back in the day, because this is actually part of the Spec Ops series back on the PlayStation 1, which were tactical third-person shooters. But this is a cover-based shooter, and it has a very unique game world. It's all like a desert post-apocalyptic thing. And one thing about this game is it has you making some really tough decisions in this game, and whatever you choose basically comes back and haunts you later. It's all about the horrors of war. Definitely one worth checking out if you're looking for something much more deeper than what it is. But as a game itself, it's a pretty fun third-person cover-based shooter. And last we have Red Faction Armageddon. Now, I enjoyed Red Faction Armageddon, even though this game is an open world like Guerrilla was. It's a much more linear game, but what I enjoyed about this game is that even though it's linear, it still has everything that Guerrilla had. You know, destruction, being able to break things down, rebuild things, and it's a really fun game. I would definitely recommend this. I think this was free a couple months ago as well, so definitely one worth checking out. Sorry I sort of went a bit fast on the end. I don't want to have to edit this video, so I'm going to end it off here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, and of course comment below and let me know what you think are some Xbox 360 hidden gems. All these games are dirt cheap. No game here is going to cost you more than £5, maybe £6 or £7 sometimes. I think the most expensive one would have been the Street Fighter game. And as always, guys, subscribe if you haven't already and join the family. And follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Twitch at The Mad Kyger. I may be streaming tonight, maybe some Overwatch, maybe I'll throw something else in there. We'll see what goes on. And as always, guys, have a nice day and I will see you in the next video. Take care and bye-bye.